Profitable practices. Farm solutions for people, profit, and the planet on Real Agriculture is brought to you by Farm Credit Canada and RBC Royal Bank.
Welcome back to another episode of Profitable Practices. I'm Kara Oosterhuis. In this episode, I head on over to Barons, Alberta to catch up with Dave Bishop of D&M Bishop Farms. Dave and his family have an irrigation and dryland farm. However, they have implemented irrigation management techniques in order to get the most out of their irrigation and make their practice as profitable as possible. Check out the conversation now.
Oh, irrigation is our most important part of the farm. It's something that we know we can get guaranteed water most years. This year we had some issues with that, but we're back to having water again, so things are looking good. It's something that we know we can control. We can't control Mother Nature, but we can control somewhat what we do here. We can put our inputs in for a certain percentage of crops that we do. We put in certain poundage for a certain yield that we try to forecast at the beginning of the year, and then we manage the water to facilitate that.
So as you're kind of alluding here, irrigating is so much more than just turning the pivot on. Do you want to talk a bit about irrigation management and what sort of methods you guys use?
Sure. Of course, the first thing that's real important is we have a rotation. So we don't grow the same crop after crop. It's a 4-year rotation between oil seeds, cereals, pulses. We throw an odd forage in an irrigation, but that's a long-term one. It's about every 10 years roughly you might get a forage, so just to break up the rotation. So that's the beginning step. We always do soil samples to see what there is for nutrients in the ground, and then we determine what we need to purchase and how much we need to put down per crop, because every crop doesn't use the same. So cereals are pretty common on the same, whether it's wheat, barley, durum, even rye for that matter. We grow rye once in a while, hybrid rye under irrigation too. So we do that, and then we look at what Mother Nature gives us for water, and we top it up with irrigation. Like
right now you have a auger you're leaning on.
Yeah.
How do you go about deciding when you're augering down what needs water?
Well, basically you auger it down, take your soil sample, and so you get a soil sample like this. You'll take it and you can run it through your fingers, and if you can make a bit of a ribbon like that, it's pretty well at 100%. So we just finished irrigating this, so I would have expected it to be 100%, and it is. So, and you can go at different depths. Like this was just at 6 inches, so we usually go down to about a foot to 18 inches depending on what crop we're growing. So it gives us an idea what our percentage of water's in the ground, so we can decide, do we need 1 inch, 2 inch, half inch, or none. So if we have a good rainstorm, which is the best, then we don't have to irrigate.
So talk about how irrigation management plays into your operation and how it kind of makes you get the most profitability out of your operation.
Oh, irrigation gives us the advantage of knowing that we can have the water to produce the crop that makes our farm more sustainable, more profitable. It's like having insurance, having irrigation, in my mind. The only thing we can't control, and we always do, is hail. Of course, we can get a big hailstorm and wipe it all out, but that's something we can't control. So we buy insurance for that. But as far as irrigation goes, it's the lifeblood of our farm. It's what makes our farm good and profitable. I'm in the LNID, and we're what we call the Keogh district, and we have pressurized pipeline. We are probably the most efficient irrigation district in Canada, even probably in North America, to be honest. Probably the only way you can get more efficient is if we had underground drip irrigation. And so we have low pressure irrigation, we have a pressurized pipeline, so whatever's in there we use, it doesn't go out the other end, so we're not losing water, it's not running by our pivots all the time, so that makes it very efficient. Also low pressure, that's very, very good. Our nozzle types for wind, so we don't lose a lot if it's windy. We try not to irrigate in a big wind event, but sometimes you're forced to, you have no choice. So we have nozzles on or sprinkler heads, I guess you should call them. They're on our pivots, so they're low drift, so you don't get a lot of drift in the wind, so they're much more efficient. Like a day like today, there's virtually no wind. You're probably getting 80 to 90% efficiency for irrigating. If it's a foggy or light drizzly day, it's 100%. If it's a 70 kilometer an hour wind, you're probably more like 50%, maybe 60.
And talk about other upgrades to the pivot, such as drop tubes, those sorts of things that help create more efficiency.
the old pivots were high pressure. They had the sprinkler heads on top, so of course they had to be high pressure because they had to go in a bigger area. And so those were you lost a lot of the water to evaporation and so forth. With the drop tubes, it's closer to the crop, so it has shorter distance to fall to the ground. The crop helps protect it when it's going down. So that's some of the innovations that have happened over the years with irrigation. There's more variable rates coming down the pipeline. That's going to be real important when they finally figure out how to make that work really well and make it affordable. That's the other thing. It's pretty pricey right now. You know, there's lots of interesting things coming down the pipeline. We quite often will put fertilizer down with the water. Fertigating, it's called. This year, because we weren't sure how much water we were going to have, we didn't do it. We hadn't figured we had enough in the ground from what we put down last fall and put down with the seed. And they're working on sensors that'll be able to read the moisture content in the ground, so when the pivot's going around, it'll actually vary your watering rate to whatever it needs in the ground. That's something I'm really excited for them to finally get done, so we can maybe use it, because I think that's the next place to go with irrigation, is the variable rate with sensors built right on the pivot. Because if you go around with like a cart for variable rate, you kind of put a prescription in, but if you get a big rain event and so forth, then that prescription can change and you don't have the accuracy you would if you actually had sensors on the pivot reading real time. Irrigation brings a lot to the economy. It is huge. It's a large percentage of the economy in southern Alberta is derived from irrigation. There's processing plants, it employs a lot of people. There are more high value crops are growing under irrigation. You have sugar beets, you got vegetables, corn, potatoes, canola is a big one. Cereals, they're not as big. We're close enough to the mountains that we get cool enough that we have to grow some cereals. We can't grow a lot of specialty crops right here. We're just too far west, so it gets too cold at night. We have tried soybeans, and not real successful, but not a disaster. So if they ever bring any varieties of something like a soybean that would grow in this area, it'd be adopted in a hurry.